The arrival of the executioners. The first signs came as distortions in the night sky. At first, astronomers thought it was a strange solar flare or perhaps a gravitational ripple from some unseen celestial body. But when the distortions grew into a pattern, a fleet-sized formation closing in from interstellar space, there was no denying what it meant. We weren't alone. For centuries, humanity had argued and speculated about first contact. Some expected benevolent visitors with wisdom to share. Others envisioned quiet traders slipping between the stars. But nobody truly believed the first ones we met would come not to talk, not to negotiate, but to erase us. The ships appeared above Earth without warning. Colossal vessels, each the size of a small city, dark and jagged like scaled predators lurking in orbit. They called themselves the Xerath Dominion, though no one on Earth knew that name yet. For them, our world was not a place to conquer or exploit. It was a nest to burn out before it hatched a threat. The first attack fell on Shanghai. A single energy beam cut through the city like a god's blade, flattening towers and vaporizing millions in less than a second. Before the survivors could even scream, another beam descended on Sao Paulo, then Lagos, then Berlin. It was not conquest. It was slaughter. Within hours, billions were dead. The United Nations called for emergency assembly, but the words collapsed into chaos. Governments argued. Militaries scrambled. Communications flickered between panic and despair. Humanity was used to war, but never once so one-sided. The Xerath didn't bother with communication. They didn't demand surrender. They didn't issue threats. They simply killed. For the first 3 days, it seemed the end of our species was inevitable. Entire fleets of Earth's ships, both military and civilian, were burned from skies. Satellites winked out like fireflies in a storm. The world's great cities smoldered beneath alien fire. And then, in the middle of the carnage, humanity's most dangerous trait began to surface: adaptability. When the U.S. Pacific Fleet was annihilated outside Hawaii, the surviving crews began modifying torpedoes on their own, slaving guidance systems to alien transmissions they'd intercepted by chance. A group of Japanese engineers pulled fragments of debris from a crashed alien scout ship and, within days, managed to crack open its power core, turning it into a bomb that leveled an entire Xerath landing zone. Russian fighter pilots, running out of ammunition, deliberately rammed their aircraft into Xerath war drones, screaming defiance all the way down. What the aliens didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that humans had always been at war with themselves. And every war, every atrocity, every desperate struggle had forged us into something they had never encountered, a species bred for survival through conflict. On the 4th day, the first Xerath soldier was captured alive. It happened in the ruins of Istanbul, where Turkish special forces ambushed a Xerath patrol. The creature was reptilian, over 3 meters tall, covered in armored scales, and radiating contempt for the prey that dared to fight it. When interrogators managed to translate its guttural speech, the message was chillingly simple. You are vermin. We cleanse vermin before infestation spreads. That was the first time humanity learned their intent. Extermination, not enslavement. But it was also the first time humanity realized something else. The Xerath could bleed. By the end of the first week, a unified military command was established, the United Terran Defense Force. It was less a coalition and more a desperate marriage of necessity. Chinese generals sat beside American admirals. Indian scientists worked with German engineers. Rivalries vanished in the face of annihilation. Humanity, for the first time in history, had a single voice, and that voice roared in defiance. The first real victory came at the Battle of Nairobi. The Xerath attempted to deploy a ground-burning device to turn the entire region into uninhabitable ash. But human forces had learned their landing patterns, anticipated their moves. Using hacked communications, they lured the Xerath into an ambush. Every weapon humanity had, tanks, rockets, even civilian trucks packed with explosives, was unleashed in a storm of fire. Against all odds, the alien device was destroyed. The cost was horrific: tens of thousands dead, But for the first time, humanity saw the impossible. Xerath war machines burning, alien bodies lying broken in the dirt. A whisper spread across the battered world. They can be killed. The Xerath, for their part, were bewildered. Prey was supposed to flee, to cower, to submit. Yet humanity dug in. Humanity improvised. Humanity turned every scrap of wreckage into a weapon, every loss into a lesson. The aliens didn't understand yet, but the war they had come to fight was not the extermination of vermin. It was a predator's challenge. And in humanity, they had found prey with teeth. By the end of the first month, Earth was still burning, but it was not broken. The Xerath fleet had expected a swift extermination. Instead, they found themselves locked in a grinding conflict with a species that refused to die quietly. The war for survival had begun, and in the shadows of our burning cities, the first whispers of vengeance began to rise. The war of survival. The world was still smoldering when humanity's counterattack began. Entire continents were scarred by orbital strikes, skies blackened with ash, and the seas filled with the wreckage of drowned cities. Yet in the ruins, humanity did what it had always done in the face of disaster. We adapted. The Xerath thought they were fighting mindless prey. They had no concept of human ingenuity under pressure. For them, war was straightforward. Massive fleets, overwhelming firepower, total annihilation. For us, war had always been asymmetrical. Humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of fighting from disadvantage. And now, the world's greatest underdog story was unfolding. Guerrilla Earth. It began with small victories. In the forests of South America, resistance fighters ambushed Xerath patrols with weapons welded together from scavenged steel and alien plasma cores. In Europe's ruins, teenagers armed with homemade explosives crippled alien supply convoys. In Africa, militias took to the savannas, using knowledge of terrain to lure armored beasts into kill zones. Every battle was costly, but every victory mattered. By the second month, humans weren't just surviving, they were learning. Scientists cracked fragments of Xerath technology, reverse engineering plasma weapons into something crude but deadly. Engineers tore apart wrecked alien drones and reprogrammed their guidance systems to turn against their masters. Hackers learned how to hijack Xerath communication signals, feeding them false information. A famous line spread across the battered networks that still linked Earth survivors. Every time they strike us, they give us the tools to kill them. It became a motto of the war. First true victory. The moment that proved humanity's defiance came at the skies above Manila. The Xerath had deployed one of their dreadnoughts to finish the region, a ship so vast it blotted out the sun. Human fleets couldn't scratch it. Conventional missiles fizzled against its shields. The dreadnought was unstoppable, and yet it was brought down, not by a nation's army, not by Earth's unified command, but by a band of misfits, a coalition of engineers, pilots, and civilians who had captured an alien shuttle weeks earlier. They strapped a stolen reactor core to the shuttle, piloted it manually, and slammed it into the dreadnought's main weapon array. The resulting explosion ripped the dreadnought apart in orbit. The skies lit with fire as fragments rained down into the Pacific. The names of those pilots became legend overnight. Humanity finally had proof that the Xerath weren't gods. They could bleed. They could die. The Xerath's mistake. The Xerath command did not understand what had happened. In their long history, no species had ever resisted extermination. Most knelt, begged, or burned. Humans did none of these. Instead, every strike against us only seemed to fuel our defiance. Reports from Xerath commanders became increasingly desperate. Soldiers described ambushes in ruined streets where humans fought like demons, charging with blades and fire when their guns ran dry. Fleets reported their own weapons turned against them, sabotaged by clever hacks. The Xerath thought they were predators culling prey. But in truth, they had walked into a war against predators just as dangerous as themselves. Unity through fire. The United Terran Defense Force, UTDF, grew from chaos into a true war machine. For the first time in history, humanity was one army. Chinese scientists worked beside French engineers. American pilots flew alongside Indian soldiers. Nations that had once been rivals now shared blood and ammunition in the same trenches. The Xerath had forced us into Extinction's shadow, and in that shadow, humanity became united. Factories rose in the ruins of old cities, churning out hybrid weapons that fused Earth steel with alien energy. Hidden bunkers became command centers, and the UTDF began planning not for survival, but for counterattack. A predator's roar. The turning point came during the siege of Johannesburg. The Xerath deployed a ground-cleansing cannon that would incinerate the entire city and its survivors. The UTDF knew it couldn't be allowed to fire. Every resource, every soldier, every scrap of technology was thrown into the battle. Fighter squadrons flew until their fuel ran dry, ramming alien drones in midair. Civilians armed with nothing but stolen rifles stormed Xerath positions. In the chaos, a team of engineers, crawling through sewers beneath the city, detonated a captured alien power core beneath the weapon. The blast leveled half the alien army. The cannon was destroyed. Johannesburg survived. For the first time, an entire region of Earth was declared safe from extermination. The victory was not just military, it was psychological. Humanity could fight the Xerath head-on and win. A war without mercy. But victory came at a price. Cities burned, millions still died every week, and food shortages spread across continents. Yet the darker the night grew, the brighter humanity's defiance burned. Every death made us harder. Every strike made us smarter. Every attempt to break us only sharpened our resolve. The Xerath came to wipe out vermin. Instead, they had taught us their technology, revealed their weaknesses, and awakened something ancient in our blood, the instinct of hunters. By the third month of war, the Xerath were no longer asking if humanity would fall. They were asking how long they could survive fighting us. The war of survival was no longer just about Earth. It was about vengeance. The Xerath had made a mistake they would never live to regret. Because humanity was no longer fighting to survive. We were fighting to win. The human counterattack. By the fourth month of the war, Earth was no longer the battlefield it had been at the start. The skies were still scorched, cities still in ruins, and billions of graves scarred the soil. But humanity was no longer on the defensive. We had learned. Every scrap of wreckage, every captured soldier, every salvaged fragment of technology had been bent, hammered, and reforged into something new. The Xerath fought with overwhelming power. We fought with adaptation. And for the first time, we were ready to take the war to them. Forging the United Terran Fleet. The United Terran Defense Force transformed from ragged survivors into something more. The United Terran Fleet. It wasn't pretty. Our first spacefaring warships were crude hybrids, built from welded steel frames around alien reactors. They rattled, they leaked radiation, and half their systems worked only when slapped hard enough. But they flew. They fired. They killed. Engineers joked that our ships were held together by duct tape, stubbornness, and the ghosts of the fallen. Yet those ships began winning battles. When the Xerath launched another assault on Earth's orbit, they expected easy prey. Instead, a ragtag squadron of hybrid frigates, crewed by men and women who had never been in space before the war, ambushed them above the ruins of the International Space Station. The fight lasted 3 days. In the end, every human ship was crippled, but 3 Xerath warships burned in orbit, and the survivors limped home victorious. The message was clear. Humanity now had claws. Tactics of terror. It wasn't just our ships that changed the war. It was our way of fighting. The Xerath fought predictably. Massive fleets, overwhelming firepower, coordinated strikes. They had crushed countless civilizations with that method. But humanity? Humanity fought dirty. We lured Xerath fleets into asteroid belts, detonating mining charges that turned rocks into shrapnel fields. We disguised orbital cannons as ruined satellites, striking when they drifted too close. Special Forces units boarded Xerath cruisers with plasma-cutting tools, tearing their way inside and slaughtering crews in the narrow corridors. The Xerath began to whisper of human demons who crawled inside their ships and butchered entire decks in the dark. It wasn't fear of our weapons that unsettled them. It was fear of us. The Siege of Titan. The moment the galaxy began to take notice came at Titan, Saturn's largest moon. The Xerath brought a fleet of 12 warships, intending to crush the fledgling human fleet before it could grow stronger. But the UTDF had prepared a trap. Mining stations orbiting Saturn had been secretly outfitted with railgun arrays, each capable of firing massive chunks of ice and rock at incredible velocities. When the Xerath fleet entered Saturn's shadow, the railguns fired. Dozens of warships were shredded before they could even raise shields. Human frigates swarmed from Titan's surface, harrying the survivors with hybrid plasma cannons. The battle was brutal and costly, but by the end, the Xerath had lost half their fleet. The Siege of Titan was more than a victory. It was a declaration. Humanity wasn't defending Earth anymore. Humanity was expanding outward. The galaxy noticed. Whispers among the stars. For centuries, other civilizations had lived under the shadow of the Xerath Dominion. Some had been conquered. Others had been exterminated. Most had hidden in fear, never daring to resist. Now, for the first time, they saw something unthinkable, a primitive species fighting the Xerath head-on and winning. Encrypted signals began to reach Earth. Messages from alien races offering intelligence, resources, sometimes even safe harbors. None dared openly join the war. Fear of Xerath retribution was too strong. But in secret, they prayed for humanity's victory. Because if humans could kill the monsters, maybe anyone could. A predator realizes the truth. Inside the Xerath Dominion, cracks began to form. Commanders argued over why the extermination had failed. Soldiers spoke of humans as cursed prey, impossible to kill. Reports described human ambushes so savage they bordered on madness. One Xerath general wrote, "They do not fight as other prey. They fight as predators who know extinction is near. They will burn their own flesh to take ours with them. I fear we have awakened a species more dangerous than ourselves." But by then, it was too late. Humanity had tasted victory, and we would not stop. The hunters awakened. The UTDF launched its first true counteroffensive in the 5th month of war. Hybrid fleets left Earth orbit, striking at Xerath forward bases across the solar system. Colonies on Mars and Luna, once doomed, were liberated. Xerath garrisons were slaughtered to the last soldier. Everywhere, humanity left the same message carved into ruins, broadcast into the void, painted on walls of burning outposts. We are not prey. The galaxy had known the Xerath as executioners, predators that ended civilizations. But now the roles were reversed. Humanity had become the hunter, and the hunt had only just begun. Extinction of the Xerath. The Xerath came to Earth as executioners. They expected the extermination of vermin. Instead, half a year later, they were the ones on the run. Humanity's counteroffensive had shattered their fleets across the solar system. Their forward bases were gone, their dreadnoughts burning wrecks adrift among the stars. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Xerath faced something they had never known before: defeat. But for humanity, defeat had never been enough. We didn't want survival anymore. We wanted vengeance. Into the lion's den. The UTDF Council debated for weeks. Some argued that forcing the Xerath to retreat was enough, that rebuilding Earth should be our focus. But others pointed out the truth. As long as the Xerath Dominion existed, humanity would never be safe. So the order was given. We would not wait for the next extermination fleet. We would bring the war to their homeworld. It was madness. The Xerath Dominion spanned hundreds of systems. Their core world was a fortress world, shielded by fleets larger than Earth's entire population of ships. But humanity had stopped believing in impossible. Hybrid warfleets poured out of the solar system. Dozens of ships cobbled from alien wreckage, powered by reactors we barely understood, crewed by men and women who had nothing left to lose. The campaign was brutal. Every Xerath system along the way was a battle of attrition. We struck supply depots, sabotaged communication hubs, turned enslaved colonies against their masters. We didn't just fight, we terrorized them, using their own tactics against them until the mighty Dominion began to collapse. Finally, after months of fire and blood, we reached it, Xerath Prime. The last battle. The sky above Xerath Prime was chaos. Their fleets, once symbols of dominance, were now desperate defenders. Human frigates dove into their formations like wolves tearing into a herd. Railguns fired asteroids at relativistic speed, shattering cruisers. Plasma torpedoes turned the void into a sea of fire. For every ship we lost, 2 Xerath burned. The battle in orbit raged for days. Human ships, scarred and broken, fought with a savagery that left even the Xerath commanders speechless. They had expected prey. What they faced were predators more relentless than themselves. At last, the human fleet broke through. Dropships descended through storms of plasma fire, carrying soldiers to the surface of Xerath Prime. War on the homeworld. The surface of Xerath Prime was a nightmare. Vast cities of black stone and steel stretched into the sky, crawling with billions of Xerath soldiers. Their fortresses were built for defense against any imaginable foe, but they had not been built for us. Human forces poured into the streets, fighting block by block. Tanks rolled down avenues of alien statues. Jetpack infantry leapt across burning towers. Civilians fought alongside soldiers, their rage as sharp as any blade. The Xerath fought with desperation, but they were already broken. Humanity's ferocity shattered their discipline. For every human that fell, 10 Xerath died. And at the heart of their capital, the last Xerath warlord stood waiting. Predator versus Predator. He was colossal, armored in black scales that gleamed like steel, a beast bred for command. The warlord challenged humanity's commander not with words, but with a roar that shook the ruins. General Marcus Hale stepped forward to meet him. He was no larger than any other man, clad in battered armor, a plasma blade crackling in his grip. The duel that followed was not one of equals. It was a clash of philosophies. The Xerath warlord fought with strength and pride, certain that brute power would crush all opposition. Hale fought with cunning, speed, and desperation. Every wound he took, he turned into an opening. Every strike he blocked, he turned into a counter. At last, with a scream that echoed through the ruins, Hale drove his blade into the warlord's chest. The beast fell, thrashing, before collapsing into the dust. For the first time in their history, the Xerath had lost not just a battle, but their soul. The end of the Xerath. The fall of their warlord broke the Dominion. With their leadership dead and their fleet shattered, the Xerath had no hope left. Humanity did not offer surrender. We did not offer peace. We exterminated them. Every stronghold was leveled. Every warship hunted down. Xerath Prime itself was turned to ash, its towers collapsing in firestorms. When the smoke cleared, the Xerath were gone, erased from the galaxy. It was brutal. It was merciless, but it was necessary. For the first time, humanity understood what it meant to be truly feared. A message to the galaxy. When the war ended, Earth still burned, but it was alive. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Civilizations that had cowered beneath the Xerath's shadow now looked upon humanity with awe and terror. We were no longer the weaklings of a backwater world. We were the species that had faced the galaxy's executioners and driven them extinct. The message we carved into the ruins of Xerath Prime spread across the stars. They came to kill us, but we hunted them. We drove them to extinction, and we will never be prey again.